All content and information on this episode is for informational and educational purposes only. Although we strive to provide accurate general information, the information presented here is not a substitute for any kind of medical, psychological, wellness, or health advice, and you should not rely solely on this information. Always consult a professional in the medical and health area for your particular needs and circumstances before making any medical or health related decisions. For your health related questions, please seek the advice of a licensed physician, counselor, or any other qualified healthcare provider immediately.
Welcome to the Same Roots New Heights podcast. And today we have a special guest who's my sister, Marjorie Frenette. She's a counseling therapist and is also an author of a children's book titled What's Wrong with My Skin. And I'll tell you more about that book later. So, Joy, the first question for you is, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your background? I know that already, but for the other listeners, what led you to become a counseling therapist?
Uh, I've always been fascinated with people's behaviors and their motivations and our unique reaction to different situations. I guess our upbringing played a lot of big role in me going into this field and growing up with a social worker mom. I was highly influenced by the way we see people before of about especially about giving them the benefit of the doubt when
Yeah.
in terms of those things. Like, because I remember I in my undergrad I learned about labeling theory and how that could be powerful in a way where we do have labels on, clarity, but at the same time how that could imprison someone just because we label them in
Mhm.
particular name, like juvenile delinquents, for example. At the time, that was the politically correct term for that. But I understand from a young age that some of them had to or had to make some choices because of those little options that they do have in life.
Mhm.
As a way of coping with the stressors that they have day to day, and just how perhaps how we make decisions based on the context of our lives. I
Mhm.
think it's very important to know.
Yeah. It's actually fascinating for me because I was always I've always seen you as someone who very sensitive with your sisters and your brother. And it's good that you mentioned about like being put in a box because I've been thinking about that lately. Not that I'm trying to be a victim of the past, but sometimes we get labeled like okay, I'm this non-creative person, so this is just what I'm gonna do, or I'm this introvert, so this is just what I'm at. I'm not gonna be good in sales or other things. So that's an interesting topic for another session.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that would be it.
yeah, it's an interesting topic. But what are some common issues that you help clients with in your practice?
Well, I mean, I don't want to go so much into details about what I do with my clients, but as a counseling therapist, I help people like you and me navigate life challenges from emotional regulation, life transitions, processing grief, loss, and traumas. It could entail gaining effective communication skills so that we can improve our relationships with ourselves and with others, our significant others, for example, because I do work with couples too.
Mm,
My work includes making sense of one's life journey and learning to switch to a more adaptive coping strategies after realizing maybe that some of the strategies that we do have in place may no longer serve us, and we get to appreciate the strengths and resilience that we have within us, and from there really choose and have an informed decision on what to do and how to move forward.
that's true. There's always another way to go forward. Now, mental health, it's such a crucial aspect of our lives.
Mhm.
So how do you define mental health and why is it important for personal development?
So I'd like to stick with World Health Organization's definition of mental health. They defined it as a basic human right and is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn and work well, and contribute to their community. I love this definition because it states how mental health is a basic human right. And yet,
Yeah.
sometimes we do have this stigma around mental health when we attend to it, as if sometimes we would just see a counselor or therapist or a social worker as if it's our last resort when we can no longer handle things. But it is a basic right that, it's like when you feel something that you can't understand about your body, you go see a doctor about it.
Yeah.
And our mental wellness influence highly, like they're all interacting systems, right? Like our physical, when I do assess my clients, for example, I do assess the biological factor behind it, the psychological factor, the environment that they're in, and the context, of course, of everything that they're going through and how they're coping with the stressors in their life. So why it's important is because sometimes, remember there's a saying that don't make decisions when you're at the peak of your emotions at the time, how you feel,
Yeah.
because it plays a really important role in our decision making and how we interact with people and how we perceive the things that are happening to us. So that's why it is very important.
Absolutely. I agree to that. Even sometimes, like if I'm not in a good mood and then I would make a decision when I'm in that state and I would regret that at night, like it's gonna make me challenging to sleep because I'm gonna say to myself, did I make the right decision? I don't think I said the right thing or whatever. I'm that type of person who worries at night. And that's why I'm also seeking someone. I'm also talking to someone because I'm glad that this is getting normalized in this we're getting there, I think. It's somehow getting normalized, but there's this stigma about seeking help or seeking someone to talk to other than your friends and families. Now, what are some signs that someone might benefit from seeing a therapist?
I like to be very careful about this because I really do want to normalize people seeing therapists as if it's not their last resort to go. Like, yes, there are signs, but at the same time, we could all benefit from seeing a therapist, especially if we just want to have a good reflection of our life. We want to gain awareness of what's working, what's not, and how we can deal with some stressors that are now overwhelming. For example, if you're going through a life transition, right? For example, in your case, your kid going to university, that change, right? As
Yeah.
as a mom, or becoming a new mom, or becoming a new parent, or going, for example, to a different country, right? To
Yeah.
all those adjustments that you'd have to make. So this could be very beneficial for everyone, even when you just want to improve the way you communicate to yourself or to your loved one, right? When it comes to a point that it's affecting your day-to-day life and it's become unmanageable, it could lead to emotional dysregulation and overall affect the quality of your life too. So that's why I believe that I'm a champion for that. If you have a good coverage for your insurance, go see a therapist. If
Go for
not,
it.
there are multiple ways that you could seek therapy, especially here in Canada where we do have a lot of nonprofit organization. For example, where I did my internship, that's one way that people could afford therapy, right? We have like free sessions and then $20 per succeeding sessions if you want to do that.
That's true. And even like if you came here to Canada as a student, there are options like in sometimes students wouldn't normally go through all of the website, like the benefits there. The
Yes.
therapy is also available. Counseling is also available
Yeah.
in schools. Yeah. Now, how can therapy support personal growth and self-improvement as that's the main goal of this podcast? So I just want our listeners to know as well.
Sure. So as a therapist, one of my main jobs is to be able to provide that safe space for someone, right? Sometimes
Mhm.
we struggle in life and All we really needed was someone to listen to us, and yet it's so hard when we live in our lives, and that's really because a lot of us go through stuff and we don't sometimes have the capacity to deal with that, right? As much as we love, and even when we have the best intentions. So as a therapist, I provide that safe space for my clients, and I reflect the stories that I hear, hopefully in a more coherent manner and hopefully in a more compassionate way, so that when things are really hard and when you're overwhelmed, sometimes it's
Mhm.
really hard to see the full picture and to take a step back and really see that, because I'm not emotionally attached to the story, I could
Mhm.
reflect that to you more accurately. At least that is my hope. And one of the benefits for self-improvement and self-personal growth is really gaining that awareness of
Yeah.
the tools that you already have. Why are you using them? Are they still working for you? From here, where do you go? Right? And it's not about me telling what to do, but it's more of giving someone an informed decision.
Mhm.
At least they will decide. What that means really is that they have seen all the evidences of their life,
Mhm.
for example, right? So I could give you an example. When you're ruminating, when you were describing earlier that you were thinking about a lot of things, right? That's what we call that's what we call
Yeah.
rumination, when we're playing over and over things in our head. Although it could sound for some people like as if you're like, oh, she's anxious and stuff like that. But yes, but that is also a coping strategy that you have learned in the past, right?
Mhm.
I'm only assuming. I'm not your therapist, so I'm only assuming that that is a learned strategy you have learned in the past to help you survive, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes you could take a step back. I was like, okay, so how is this still helping me now, right? Because at the end of the day, it coping strategies are there in place because they have helped you in some point in your life.
Mhm. Yeah. I think it's also good to see someone, to see a therapist, because, like, in my case, I am seeing someone,
Mhm.
and in the beginning, where she would ask me things about myself, and I'm like kind of diminishing what I'm achieving, or what I'm
Yes. Yeah.
like I'm diminishing my self-worth. But then from the other perspective of someone listening, it's like it seems like you're someone else than what you thought, like it's something that is different from what you define yourself. So it helps awareness of oneself.
Yeah, and so gaining that awareness could help you really see your strengths, right? And your,
Mm-hmm.
like I said earlier, and that opens up more opportunities for growth. And it's because you can make a choice to maintain, either to maintain that status quo
Mm-hmm.
where you are, or move forward with the new skills that you have. At the same time, at the end of the day, therapy empowers someone by having an informed decision, like I said earlier, and which could lead to a
Mm-hmm.
more meaningful life, right? Our goal, hopefully, all of us, our goal is to live our lives more meaningful and have that vitality instead of
Mm-hmm.
always just waiting for all those miracles to happen to us. There would be days in our lives sometimes that we we want to wonder, like, okay, so I feel like I had the same stress yesterday, and how come this today is really hard, right? So again, having that awareness of the full context of the situation, maybe because I am going through, maybe challenges in my life right now, or maybe the task that I'm being given is really above me, or maybe this is something that I can do on a daily basis, except today my heart's really broken for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those factors could really affect your mental well-being if not in check. So at least seeing
Mm-hmm.
someone could help you or could guide you about those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really define the context that has led you to where you are right now.
That's true. And can you share any success stories where therapy significantly impacted someone's personal development journey? Do you have any so far?
Yes, I have myself. So, yeah, I think there's like my early therapy experience was when I was still in college. I took the free one, like we were talking about
Mhm.
earlier, and I wouldn't have taken it if I didn't like I think if I didn't cry to to one of my professors before that, I'm really overwhelmed, and I for some reason I couldn't take in any of the classes that I'm like I couldn't comprehend them, even though I know
Mm-hmm.
I normal on a normal basis I could, but I was going through a lot of things around that time. So just having someone to normalize what you're going through, I'm like, yeah, because you're really having a rough time right now, so it would make sense that you couldn't
Mm-hmm.
function the way you used to, right? And but sometimes, yeah, like I do tend to, I know for myself, I do tend to minimize the things that I'm going through in order to survive. You know, remember in Philippines where we grew up, is we're always told that you're weak if you just cry over things, right?
Yeah.
So those are, I find that was very empowering for me. So the second time that I found how therapy impacted my life was when I had um, a concussion, and
Mm-hmm.
concussion really it's a brain injury that shakes your brain. And you could imagine like when someone experienced that for the first time, or maybe I have experienced that before too, but when you experience that, it's really confusing and you don't feel grounded. And the problem with that is because it's inside and it's not, you're not bleeding,
Yeah.
right? Compared to a physical injury, no one really could understand what you're going through unless they have gone through the same experience that you've gone.
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, I was blaming myself for getting hit, even though it doesn't make sense looking back now. Like I didn't control the weather that day when
Yeah.
I got an accident, and yet what really got to me was like, why do I always go there? Why do I always blame myself when unfortunate
Mm-hmm.
things happen? Right? These are really things that are outside my control, and that was like mind blowing to me at the time, because
Mm-hmm.
like, that is true. Like I did have some assumptions in my life that I thought just like crying before. I remember I used to cry at the cemetery when I moved here because I felt like I have no one to talk to, and if I do, I would feel bad for the people around me, that if they know,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm scared of, oh my god, they,
Scared
what
of being judged.
yeah, I'm scared of being judged. But then you go see this stranger who just welcomes you with open arms and just normalize the things that you're going through and validates your experience. Because sometimes when how many times have we heard that, oh, you're just being a baby, right? I've been told that when I had my concussion. I'm like, well, yeah, who wouldn't when you're going through what I'm going through, right? Like your brain just got shook and you wonder. I wonder if
If
I
you're gonna be able to function the same as
exactly.
before.
It's pretty big deal if you think about it. It's your
Mm-hmm.
brain, and even
You
your
give me anxiety.
yeah, yeah, all the anxiety that has gone through the roof, and that really helped me because I know that I started really feeling dysregulated, and I didn't know how to react because I'm just so used to like this will go away, this will go away, and it didn't. So and then eventually, yeah, just by having that someone to listen to you, it's very impactful. I think it's very underrated, but just having someone who validates your experience and just being present with you in that moment where your your pain is not minimized is, yeah, it could be a very therapeutic healing. Like it's just amazing for me.
Yeah, I can absolutely agree that it's been a successful journey for you because you wrote a book about the stigma, some kind of stigma in terms of the children being judged because of their skin color
Mhm.
or looked down on because of their skin color and how it affected your mental health. And then even, I mean, not just a book, you even studied psychology so you can help other people in this mental wellness space. So I'm really proud of you.
Aw, thank
And yeah, I'm so proud of my sister. Now,
And
our
I'm so proud
listeners,
of you because it takes courage to see someone, right? I'm always proud of you. Anyway, oh, we're getting emotional.
thank you. Now, our listeners are always looking for practical advice. So, what are some strategies or techniques you recommend for maintaining good mental health?
Um, on the top of my mind is mindfulness. And mindfulness
Mhm.
is really just paying attention to the present moment, adding intentionality to the things that we do. It's not necessarily about stopping the thoughts coming into your head. We have like, I think if I'm not mistaken, about 70,000 thoughts that runs through
Mhm.
your
Yeah,
mind.
that's what I heard earlier in a
Yeah,
podcast.
so it's if you think about it, it would be impossible to stop them going through your mind, right? But mindfulness is about recognizing and just acknowledging that thoughts come in, and then you go back to where you are. One of the things that I could teach you, for example, about mindfulness is to just pay attention to your breath if that's comfortable for
Mhm.
you. Um, Try it for 2 minutes, and then when you notice that your thoughts gone somewhere else or thoughts are coming in, then recognize the thoughts. You don't have to judge them. Like
Mhm.
sometimes
Mhm.
we are the only species on Earth who judge the way we think. Isn't that interesting? So, for example, like you thought of like for example, I thought I'm like, I really had to think about food today. I must be like, I can't believe I'm thinking about food and I just ate. Like that
You judge yourself right away.
instantly that's a judgment, right? But you could keep it as neutral as possible, right? Like for me, when I catch myself like my thoughts drifting, I'm just all I do is like acknowledge them, like, oh, I went there. Okay, I'm
Mhm.
here. Okay, I'm talking to my sister, right? So it's healthy. It's healthy to talk to yourself, and it's healthy to just acknowledge the thoughts come and go, and it just because you thought of them doesn't make you whatever you judge yourself, right? It's just
Mhm.
you didn't act on it. You don't have to judge it. And I think, yeah. So going back to the thoughts, I always use the metaphor of the train of thoughts because
Mhm.
if you think about it, think of yourself as if you're in a train station, right? And then you see the train pass by. Once you notice yourself thinking of the what ifs, right? That tells me that you're traveling to the future. And
Mhm.
especially when it's all about suffering, we're multiplying our suffering and it's not even happening yet, right? Sometimes we prepare ourselves for there's difference between planning, like actively planning and just really getting prepared for things, but to ruminate over and over to the things that are happening not happening yet, we just can't accept that as a reality because it's not happening yet, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
when you're trapped into the what ifs, that's a good clue for you that you're not in the present because you're in the future. And then the other side of that train is the could have, right? That shoulda, woulda, coulda. The
Mhm.
could haves. That tells me that you're not in the present as well because you're in the past, right? The things that I could have done better, right? While it's adaptive to really see what happened in the past, but when you're trying to replay that over and over in your head, you can't really resist the past anymore when it's already happened.
Mhm.
You can work on what's happening in the present moment, right? And just bring yourself back to present. Oh, all right, I'm cooking right now. I'm focusing my attention on the cooking, right? Being present and being mindful is paying attention to your senses, right? Like if you could choose which one, sometimes we do like being mindful in eating, right? Every bite, slow down. If you're not in a hurry, if you have that luxury. So I know I got so used to the 30-minute lunch break before, so I'm like, ah. But when I do have time, I make it a point to really slow down and taste what I'm eating, right? It's the
Mhm.
same when we use our senses for music to really lean into to the emotions of what the song is telling us, and it's the same with our eyes when we're in nature to notice every movement of the trees or the things around. You'd be surprised what you'll hear, when you
Mhm.
just close your eyes, for example, and listen to the nature, like, oh, all of a sudden I could hear the owl. At least where
Mhm.
where I'm from. So yes, that's a form of mindfulness. And sometimes we do think that mindfulness has to be, the yogic way of, and there nothing's wrong with that. But when you're a newbie on mindfulness, this is really what we could, you know, start implementing to ourselves, like paying attention at least for 2 minutes. And if your mind wanders, just acknowledge it and go back. So that's one. And the other one to maintain good health is really self-care. It's one of the best ways that we could maintain our overall functioning, not just our mental, but our overall well-being. There's this author called Eleanor Knox. Sorry, Eleanor Knox, I think. Famous. One of her famous quotes is
Mhm.
she saying, "Self-care is not me first. It means me too." And I like
Mhm.
that because it is about attending our own needs, our basic needs, for example. That yes, we do care about other people, but our needs matter just as everyone else,
Just the same.
right? That, and there are areas of our life we could pay attention to in terms of self-care, and one is the body and physical care. So this could entail exercise. For some people, they have the luxury to go to the gym, but if not,
Mhm.
at least we can just keep moving to produce endorphins,
Mhm.
the happy hormones. Like I said before, sometimes we'd have to do some of the work too to produce those happy chemicals in our brain, right? So endorphins is that's what we get from exercise. Mental and mind and mental care. So, for
Mhm.
example, this is seeing a therapist, right? I have my own therapist to
Mhm.
to recover from from day to day stressors and maintain like a balance health for me, for example, or mental well being. Um, Sometimes this could be in a form of spiritual activities, right? For example, for you and even for myself, I remember as a kid, this has been one of my resilience factor when I joined Youth for Christ, for example,
Mhm.
right? This doesn't necessarily have to be religious. It could
Mhm.
be anything spiritual for you. The other one is the relationship and relational care. How often
Mhm.
do I see my friends? How am I showing up to them? And is it due for me, for example, to go
Yeah.
see a friend? I make it a point, for example, for myself to see my friends if I can, and you and my sister,
Mhm.
to see you guys at least for in a month at least 4 times if I could, right? That's my weekly um, friend pill or social pill.
Mhm.
Because having relationships, maintaining relationships, and it's not about the numbers, but there's
Mhm.
studies that says
Yeah.
we really do only need at least four meaningful relationships in our life, four meaningful friendships to survive our adult life. And a lot of people, sometimes we wonder like, oh, it's so hard to make friends. But yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's hard, but it's not the number, the quantity of your friends, but it's the quality of your relationship with them, right? And you're not just showing up to them for the sake of showing up to them, you're also showing up for yourself because it's good for your mental health. So,
Mhm.
yeah. I think the last one that I just want to bring up for that is self compassion. Because I
Mhm.
know I mentioned about all this self care, the body, the physical one, the mind and mental. The one I forgot is actually the physical environment. It is really
Mhm.
decluttering your space. And this could be challenging, especially for me who have a toddler, right? But it's a matter sometimes of just really prioritizing which areas maybe of your environment
Mhm.
you like to declutter enough that you
Yeah.
you can maintain your well-being and not be overwhelmed by it. So I don't mean like complete cleaning, but whatever works for you, right? At the end of the day, it's always what works for you. And this is where self-compassion comes in, right? Because like for myself, there would be times I won't be able to clean, and there would be we'll just assign whatever. Okay, maybe today
Mhm.
it's just the bedroom, and I'll just forgive myself quickly. If
Yeah.
maybe I lose my temper to my husband, maybe I lost my temper to my child, right? To quickly forgive yourself for what you have done. You are doing the best you can at the moment, at the capacity that you have for the moment. right? Show up for yourself. Self-compassion requires self-compassion is not getting yourself off the hook, but it's really allowing you to really see the root, or at least where is this coming from, understanding the context of where you're coming from, right? And knowing that in this moment this is the best that you could, because really it's the
I
best,
agree.
right? So yeah.
Totally agree to that. I've learned to let go. Sometimes I would be like, oh, the house is so messy. I need to do this, I need to do that. And then by the end of the day, you didn't really have time for yourself, and then you get mad at everybody. So it's not a good thing. So I've learned just okay, as long as I did this one thing, one part of the house, I'm gonna let go and I'm gonna have fun with my children and my husband.
My
Yeah,
motto is like,
that's a
did you
good
have fun?
advice.
And that's all that matters. Were you safe? That's all that matters.
What advice would you give to someone who is hesitant about seeking therapy?
Okay, so when we consistently feel physical pain, we don't shame people for seeking help from the doctor, and we don't tell them like
Mm-mm.
you couldn't figure out that yourself, right? But
Mm.
when it comes to mental health, it's as if we have this stigma around people seeking mental health that, oh, they probably just, they can't just do it,
Something wrong with them.
right? Like where we grew up, it's kind of the norm, right? And
Mm-mm.
there's sometimes it's even more like we would even hide the way we feel just to protect our names and protect, whoever you want to protect. But
Mm.
it comes to a point where it's no longer healthy, and you when we're not when our quality of life is getting affected at some point in your life, you'd have to ask yourself, where is this shame or stigma about seeking help comes from,
Mm-mm.
right? What does culture play in this one, and where am I getting all this biases over seeking help, and is
Mm-mm.
it still productive, is it still helping me, how is this serving me, right?
Mm-mm.
And yes, and maybe some people are not into mental health and
Mm-mm.
are not into seeking help, and that at the end of the day, that is still their choice, right? But I would want for them, or I would really be curious about, how did I formulate this, and is it still working in the environment where I'm in, right?
Mm-mm. Thank you so much for sharing. Those advice are really helpful. And do you have any final tips or advice for our listeners on how to prioritize their mental health?
Having stress in your life is part of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, we need friction to grow as human beings. We just have to really understand the context of what we're going through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that it's not necessarily that we're less of a person just because we cry, or just because we feel certain emotions like sadness and anger, or anything, right? Because it's all, at the end of the day, it's about context of what you're going through. And if you're, for example, just lost someone you love, it's perfectly normal to be sad.
Mm-hmm.
That is a healthy response to what someone would go through for dealing with loss. And I think we have to be really careful about how we label people, about being weak just because you show negative emotions, because emotions serve a really like healthy function in us.
Mm-hmm.
There are good signals for us to show, there are good indicators that we need to attend to something in ourselves, or
Mm-hmm.
to attend to our needs, right? So I think it's living is not just about experiencing joy, but it's experiencing all your emotions fully and understanding them, and really realizing that experiencing some of these emotions, though they may be negative, it doesn't tell me that you're less of a human being. It tells me that you are human, and you're being
Mm-hmm.
humane by attending to your emotions, by listening to what's going inside you.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, where can our listeners find you? Like, do you have any social media? I know
Yeah.
you have a website that I handle.
Well,
And tell us about your book.
so my book, I haven't promoted it in a while. My book is about what's wrong with my skin. It's all about really my experiences as a child seeing commercials about whitening products like
Mhm.
and be like have that quality of beauty based on your skin tone. So I think
Mhm.
the impacts of that to a child hearing this kinds of stories and narratives in our head, or just simply boxing us to what beauty could be and where you're not. It has a
Mhm.
detrimental effect on our well-being, especially for the kids that we are hoping to be better human beings than us. So we need to pave way for that. We need to normalize that we all have different skin tone. We all are unique individuals, right?
All right. Well, thank you so much for everything that we discussed today. I hope our listeners were able to get something out of it because I sure did. And I have one last thing to say a quote from that I heard from Ed Milet. He's one of the few podcasters that I listen to, and he said, "If you can survive the temporary, you'll meet another version of yourself." So just like how we can survive stress
Mm-hmm.
by prioritizing our mental health and or help prioritizing our mental wellness, then we can see another version of ourselves. Thank you so much.